Hello once again and welcome to the reading of the enemy lore for Have a Nice Death. We're going to do the reading of the enemy lore based on individual acts. So we start with Boss Brad from Act 1, the head of security. A nice tie, a black suit that rivals the boss's own cloak in terms of class and darkness. Brad is a perfect fit for his job deciding which souls can cross the ethereal threshold of Death Inc. and which should be ejected with a well-aimed kick up the backside because their time has not yet come. He loves being a gargoyle because it gives him the clout he needs to kick ghosts' butts. Will Hung, budgetary inspection thanager. One might assume Will is the dead body hanging from the knot tied in the rope. He finds this assumption infuriating because Will Hung is the rope. He had the same problem back when he worked with dockers in the land of the living, and Will hated when they confused him with someone else. He allegedly tried to make himself stand out by strangling some of his mortal colleagues, which earned him his place at Death Inc. Unfortunately for him, the situation didn't improve once he started working for the company. Flying Book. Binders, paper charts, photo organization charts, ancient folders. Nothing escapes what Patrick calls the atrocious curse of bitter documentation, or ACBD for short. If a document isn't consulted often enough, it comes to life and takes vengeance for its neglect. Crow. Black feathery beasts with vicious tempers. These half macrame, half barbed wired birds could easily be mistaken for their earthly namesakes, if only they were as smart as those in the land of the living. The ones that roam the grounds of Death Inc. are in fact alarmingly stupid. The Pyro Ghost. Ghosts are not usually capable of expressing emotions other than boredom or indifference, but there are some exceptions. For example, after repeating the same mundane tasks over and over again hundreds of times, they can begin to feel frustrated. This results in devastating flames erupting from their tired faces, which is never a good sign, magically speaking. Ghost. Ghosts are at the very bottom of Death Inc.'s company hierarchy. These minions are more commonly referred to as diseasonal workers, who, like their colleagues, created by the Sorrows, are not subject to Death Inc.'s undead worker labor agreement. In that case, what are they even doing here? To boost numbers in all departments, without exception. Spooksmen. All multinationals have specific departments which are defined according to a hierarchy. Ghosts, like all other employees and minions at Death Inc., have their superiors. They are known as the Spooksmen, to highlight their managerial qualities, namely violence and a complete lack of subtlety. Act 2. Mr. Gordon Grimes. Mr. Gordon Grimes, head of industrial pollution. At the end of the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution changed the face of the world, and young Gordon saw a unique opportunity to cover himself in oil and glory. He dived headlong into work, and a vat filled with the most toxic, disgusting, and pestilent substances ever known. Out came a putrid colossus, spewed out by the metal work factory that is still polluting the air we breathe to this day. In other words, he saw his chance and took it. Slima. Mutant radioactive pet barrel. This barrel wasn't always this way. Before its numerous transformations, it was just your average cask, filled with nuclear waste of unrivaled toxicity, hidden deep underground in the middle of nowhere. The serial number engraved on the lower edge reads 5LYM4, but some sharp-witted worker wrote over the 5 and the 4 with permanent marker, so now it says Slima. Blobby. The Industrial Pollution Department is a treasure trove of magical and chemical anomalies. Many of the CEO's necromantic creations have been modified to be a better fit for Gordon Grimes' factory project. Blobbies make up the bulk of the team of mutant workers working under the Sorrow. Patrol. Colossi covered in a vile substance. The trolls are to Blobbies what Spooksmen are to ghosts. Yet Grimes considers them to be hierarchically equivalent to other minions in the pollution department. I'm the boss, I don't need to delegate. Splurty. When Gordon Grimes is dissatisfied with a Blobby or a patrol's performance, or if they're getting too dissident and not respecting his managerial advice, he doesn't suspend or even fire them. He literally recycles the problematic minion and turns them into a Splurty. Sea glue. According to Orville's research, every time a seagull, an albatross, or any other seabird dies in an oil spill, there is exactly an 85.5% chance that it will come back to life right in the A544 office of the Industrial Pollution Department. The office is always filled to the brim with fuel and often causes small explosions, which explains the power outages on that floor. Buma! None of the employees in Death Inc.'s mail department want to visit the pollution department for obvious reasons. The Bumas, the minions tasked with transporting the most volatile fuels, are horrifically clumsy. They're almost certainly those responsible for the most recent gas leaks. Act 3. Mr. Hector Crank, head of physical disease. Hector didn't wait for death to hire him before getting stuck into his work. He's self-taught, a real self-made crab, who single-handedly created a unique stench that will plague all life for millennia to come. At the cost of his poor little crustaceous shell, and by combining cells in an entirely unnatural way, the terrible and ignominious cancer was born. Denzel King Dengue. Rapper, actor, influencer. Davy Dawson was a highly influential mosquito in urban circles. Originally from a reputable family of Calicidae, he initially spent 2 years working as a doctor before realizing he could have an unlikely career as a hip-hop singer. Davy had his first hit with Suck It, under the pseudonym Junior Juicy Palace. Heartbreaker. Working for the company can be stressful. Managing the constant pressure of Death Inc. requires a Herculean degree of sang-froid. As far as Hector Crank is concerned, making money is the main thing, even if that means working 15-hour days with people who really get on his nerves. That's why most of his minions are known as walking heart attacks, the Heartbreak. Nurserian. Both the offices and the staff at the physical illness department stink to high heaven and are crawling with other infectious diseases that have a negative impact on the company's productivity. As a result, a special clause was added to the 1954 circular, enabling them to transform the spectral essence of any medical practitioner who passes away into a shadowy being authorized to carry out emergency trepanation, rather than recycling them into soulry. This is where nurserians come from. Ulcermonar. There's a rumor going around that Grimes and Crank are stealing one another's ideas. When one comes up with a dirty trick to work his minions like slaves, the other wastes no time in adopting the same technique to exploit his own workers, almost to the letter. The existence of the Ulcermonars in the physical illness department just confirmed this phenomenon. Grimes counts on his splurties to oversee his flock, and Crank has put his Ulcermonars to similar use. Demisim. Once capsules, tablets, and pills in famous pharmaceutical groups from the living world. Creatures named Demisim are a flock of medicine stuff responsible for killing a certain amount of souls, registered by Death Inc. So these meds are hanging around in the company fringes waiting for a chemical recycling before going back to work. They've been steeped in some bizarre and gruesome liquid solutions. They appear to be cute at first glance, but don't fool yourself. They're cruel murderers. Designed by Corvicini Preston, the former Sorrow of Anthropozenosis, Demisim were first granted with a levitating ability, before being able to move freely in the air. This is by filling their capsule-shaped body with a special gas similar with boiled hydrogen. Yes, of course, it's very dangerous. But with a nice twist on their scent, fully grown Rafflesia flavored. Therefore, Preston clearly deserved to retire. Act 4. Max, Head of Addictions. Even amongst Death Inc.'s most devastating sorrows, the organism known as Max is a bit of an odd one out. A true abomination that raises more questions than it answers about the company's recruitment process. Rumors are rife concerning his life before death. Pathological collector of all liquid and olfactory substances from the surface, organized crime lord taken hostage by a private militia, trainee chemist who got caught up in an unfortunate experiment. There is no end to the speculation, but so far, nobody has guessed correctly. Candace, event facilitator. Lucy Fruit is a highly trained actress who decided to specialize in the art of clowning when she entered the conservatory. On stage, she fills out her act with acrobatic gags. This sort of training doesn't come cheap, so to pay for it, she works as an event facilitator at a children's club on Wednesdays and during vacations. As a bonus, this has also made her an expert at dealing with a difficult crowd. Imposter. All minions working in the addictions department are distant victims of the sorrow that manages them, the anomaly known as Max. Imposters, for example, are condemned souls, imprisoned in unarticulated puppets, attached to tightly strung mechanisms in inoffensive-looking boxes. On Earth, these souls were afflicted with a compulsive obsession with nights out. Smoker. Until February 1st, 2007, Death Inc.'s employees and minions were allowed to smoke on company premises, whenever and wherever they liked. Since then, Death has given in to the constant complaints from his management team about the cost of ashtray maintenance, and the lingering smell of smoke in the offices. Everything tobacco-related became the domain of the addictions department, under the watchful eye of young Max. Sullied. The recruitment process for minions known as the Sullied is unique, to say the least, at Death Inc. When a minion from a different department becomes overwhelmed with their work, which is a common occurrence, what remains of their soul is instantly sucked into the well, recycling the little essence that remains into soulery, and the minion becomes nothing more than an obedient blob, impervious to menial tasks. Act 5. Major Warren Pliscon, Head of Modern Warfare. On the surface, Warren was nothing short of a calamity. At Death Inc., he's a large-scale catastrophe. Large-scale is a bit of a misnomer, given that he's only 4 feet tall standing to attention, which is to say, all the time. Drawing inspiration from the greatest khaki-kitted, metal-adorned scoundrels of all time, little Warren set out on a journey from which there was no return. Hitching a ride on a Death and Taxes 850 Warhead guaranteed him a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Some say it might calm the spirits, but not in Warren's case. Veteran. The first of the Major's minion recruitment drives was a simple process that took place during a historic conflict of hitherto unheard-of violence. In the middle of World War I, all you had to do was drop into the trenches to find hordes of new recruits. Veterans are old soldiers who fell in no man's land, flattened by shells or suffocated by Zyklon A. Bombera. As you may have guessed from its name, the Department of Modern Warfare includes the cruelest and most vile abominations ever to have been created. Mortal perils hated by everyone the mortal world over. Bomberas are little girls, and some of the most highly feared employees in Death Inc.'s pyramid of horrors, because everyone knows about the damage and destruction they leave in their wake. And that wraps it up for the enemy lore in Have a Nice Death. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to have a steady injection of Have a Nice Death in your YouTube feed. Here is the employee lore, as well as a playlist that you might want to check out. And until next time, have a nice day.